Okay, thank you for being here for our quick hits conversation. Today, I would like to talk about how do we stand out? How do you get a promotion? How do you find new clients? How do you make new sales when all of us are just little boxes on a Zoom screen? What does that look like? So, David, do you want to jump in and start us off? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think it's a very fair question. And after all, it's been a very steep learning curve for most of us. And very early on of the pandemic, I actually furloughed myself out of the business, so I wasn't able to speak to customers. So I
Mm.
missed this whole curve of people sort of having meetings on Zoom wearing inappropriate clothing with children climbing all over them and dogs barking in the background. Um, and it was awful because everyone was ahead of the curve from me
Mm.
when I got into it. Um, so that was one thing, and a lot of people I think see it as a necessary evil. They don't even enjoy these meetings. They
Mm.
don't like. They've never got past that. Oh my God, I don't like this. I don't like this. And it does depend, I suppose, if it's client facing or if it's a job interview or just a team meeting with your colleagues. But I think the interesting thing for me from a professional point of view is what to wear. You
Oh,
know,
is that really for you
present
the
yourself.
challenge?
Yeah, my business partner, he's big for being always very smart and always logoed up.
Mm.
So that's how he approaches it, and I think that pushes me towards the reality that you need to be real, you need to be authentic, and be yourself. Um, it's not a competition unless you want to make it one.
Mm.
That's how I feel about it, and it's still so new, and it's there are things
Is it
happening.
though? We've been doing this for a year.
Yeah, but it's in life, it's still new. I mean, I used to rock up at meetings after driving for 4.5 hours,
Mm.
feeling pretty tired, but having to be switched on and walk into that meeting and be that sales guy that's going to get that deal. A proper handshake, proper meeting. It's very different. And I think it's a bit like one day I stepped into the office and people weren't wearing ties. It was
Ah.
a long time ago. And I thought, what's happening here? And then you had Dress Down Friday. What's happening here? Why are people scruffy in the office? And I think that's what happened whilst I wasn't on Zoom at the very
Mm.
start of all this, is suddenly people could sit in cycling shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops and nobody cared, apart from me,
Interesting.
because I was coming in so late.
Right. Jim, what are your thoughts on all of, I mean, he said a lot, got a lot of different points in there. What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. And we've had a lot of shift happening, a lot of shift hitting the fan of last year. And people are doing things differently. There's an increase in isolation. So I would say my tip is to don't hesitate to reach out to people.
Mm.
And people want to talk to someone. I find it easier to connect people by phone than I do actually by Zoom. For
Mm.
some reason, just because I get to listen and tune into them a little bit easier. But increasingly, people are not answering their phone calls either, which
Yeah.
makes things interesting. So what I've done to sort of get around that is I send out a little email. I have an online scheduler called Schedule Once, where they get to look at my calendar and they get to look at their calendar and just pick a time to talk and connect.
Mm.
That works out really well for me. And then it's just a matter of staying in touch. I send out a newsletter that goes out on a monthly basis. And the key to being successful with that, as Dave says, is just to be authentic, just be yourself.
Your
And
newsletters are actually super interesting. I enjoy them.
they are quirky. Yeah.
Quirky.
But
That's a good word.
they are
They're
quirky, but
quirky.
people read them, which is kind of amazing. And I write to amuse myself. Because if I don't find what I'm writing amusing, then chances are that you're not going to find it amusing either. So that's how you have to do it. And
I think a big part of it is being willing to have an opinion. I think so many people are so afraid online, whether it's on their LinkedIn or in Zoom meetings or whatever, they're trying to so hard to conform and they don't have an opinion, and you can't stand out if you don't have an opinion.
yeah, so that's interesting. And it ties into something else that I'm seeing. And people are, people have opinions. I don't think that's the issue. But sometimes people don't emote enough on Zoom, I'm
Interesting.
finding. And that if I'm like lecturing a class or something like that and on Zoom, all the students are just kind of like looking at me, but they're not like responding and you're not like quite sure if they're getting it or not.
Mm.
So I find it helpful to be an active listener and to respond, just with my face, with my gestures, whatever, when someone else is talking, so that they know that they are being heard. And that, I think, is a really good skill to have.
I agree. I think that's a good point, that if you are a little, box on Zoom, if everybody else is just staring at the screen or looking over here,
No,
and you are actively engaging, you are going to be more
it's
noticed.
a little creepy sometimes, like when people are just looking at you and you have to, I think, respond. I mean, seriously, you have to respond and interact.
I think the answer is to sing. Do you remember the Muppets used to do that thing where they were all little boxes? And they were
Yes.
the song. So maybe we should all sing a Muppet song at the start of every Zoom meeting, just to kick things off with energy.
That would be quirky.
That would be quirky, but I would, yes, absolutely.
Jim, you can steal that one for your email.
Well, we were on a call yesterday with a fellow who sings shanty songs on Zoom.
Sure. Yeah.
And he said, you don't have to sing well, you just have to sing loudly.
And he said, just mute yourself. Nobody has to hear it.
I know. And I just thought that was delightful.
So I think another good option is that I think people feel like if they're going to be on social media to be seen, they have to be a content creator. I can talk this morning, content creator. And I don't think that that's true. I think you can engage with content. Like for example, this right here, I invite people, if you want to join in, if you want to be part of one of these quick hit conversations, just message me. And a lot of people don't take that opportunity. So if you have an opportunity to, engage, do so. If you find an interesting article, if you're reading, and you should be reading in your network or in your industry, and you find something interesting, post it. Not just post, but comment. This is what I agree with. This is what I disagree with. And I think that helps you stand out as well. I don't think people realize you don't have to be a content creator.
I think it's very true. I think a lot of people, we see it on LinkedIn a lot. A lot of people will sit in the shadows watching what's going on and just say something every now and then. You suddenly realize by what they've said that they've been watching everything. But they choose to sit back in the shadows. And I suppose that's okay. That's how they want to do it.
Yeah, it's fine, but it's not going to get you a promotion. It's not going to get you a client.
Yeah, but there also has to be balance. So, I look at the time allotted and I look at how many participants on the call, and I try not to go beyond my fraction of that time.
Okay.
And I've been on calls where someone's just holding forth for like 5 minutes on like every single question. And, you're just in the background typing things away in the chat room because you can't get a word in.
I've done that too. And I've been on Zoom meetings where it's just like, I have a comment, but I can't get it in edgewise. Let me just put it in the chat. I've actually hijacked a Zoom call once on the chat because
it could
happen. Chat was more interesting than the call.
It's sometimes they are. Yeah, it's true.
So that's one option. Although I don't know if I necessarily recommend that one, is to hijack a call in the chat. But that is something you can do if you have a comment and you feel like it's not something you want to put forth in the call. The chat is a good place to add it. And then if the person who's running the call is a good facilitator and sees it, they can bring it forward and say, "Oh, this is interesting. Let's talk about it." So that can
also direct your comments as well. So in that chat box, you can say who hears that chat. And that's helpful.
When you start doing that, you have to be so careful because it's so easy. I've done that, like had multiple conversations going on privately with people. And then I'm like, wait, who am I talking to? Which conversation is which? And I'm supposed to be listening to the Zoom call too.
I'd say the interesting one for me is the different techniques that different people use. When we talk with Katie, fantastic. 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Fantastic. But she is scribbling like the clappers, and then we get to the end of the discussion and someone will say, "Katie, what do you think?" And suddenly this whole amazing thought process comes out of all the scribbling and the ideas she was having from what everybody else was saying. It's so collaborative. She's such a team player. It's an amazing technique to learn and use. Yeah,
she does take phenomenal notes and is really good at summarizing stuff. That's a really great way to stand out. But not fortunately for us, we know that about Katie. So when we're on calls with her, we're always like, "Katie, pitch in." But if you don't have someone who's that kind of facilitator who's going to remember to ask you, you have to remember to, speak up for yourself.
But it's a technique that you can try and improve yourself,
Yeah. So we are at 10 minutes. We have had a great conversation. I appreciate your guys' insights. Thanks so much for being here. I look forward to doing another quick hit conversation with both of you. Thanks so much.
I love it. Thanks for the
Thanks so
invite.
much.